We're going to walk through what the requirements are on your final project. I've worked up an example with the requirements incorporated into it. And as you probably have guessed, I really like photography. So my site is kind of highlighting my own photography. So I would recommend that you do your project on something that you really enjoy. If you would like to take a previous assignment and tweak it for the final project, that is okay. It's totally up to you what you want to do this on. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is set up your folder structure. So you need a final project folder, and that will be located with all of your lesson folders. Inside that folder, you need a media folder and a CSS folder. You are also going to need to create a page that you're going to call index.html. So if you're using a previous assignment, you can either copy it and paste it into the final project folder, or you can open it and save it into your final project folder. Just make sure you call it index.html. And you can see that in my example, I do have a final project folder, and I did name the file index.html. The final project can be a single page like this one, or you can have multiple pages. Okay, it's totally up to you. If you create multiple pages, just make sure you link them into the index page so that I can find everything. The HTML requirements for this are you need a viewport meta tag. So if we look at the HTML, you can see that I have actually 3 meta tags, and the first one is for viewport, which is the mobile friendly tag. You need to have at least 4 images, and if you want to make one of them a background image, that is okay. All of your images should be in the media folder. All of your images need to have alternate text. That will make them screen reader friendly. So people who are visually impaired will know what your graphic contains. All images and backgrounds should be responsive. And then the content in your page should flow around the images that are embedded in your pages. So if you've got columns, and inside a column you have both a graphic and text, you're probably going to have to use that CSS float property, either float left or float right, so that the text flows around your graphic. In my example, I'm using Gridview, and so I've got basically 4 columns, and they lay out side by side, so I do have content right next to each other. Okay, so depending on what you're going to have in your page, that's going to kind of determine how you make the text and the content flow. And that brings me to another requirement that we kind of skipped over, and this is actually super important. You, ahead of time, should determine what the purpose of your site is, who the intended audience is, what the color scheme is, and why you chose those colors. And then you also need to determine the layout and design and why you selected them. And that is not only grid view versus CSS grid, but that gets into your menus. You know, why did you pick the particular menu that you're using? So in mine, I can tell you the color scheme that I chose, because this is highlighting my photography. I chose a white background, and then for mobile, I chose black. And you know, typically if you go into a gallery, things are matted either on white or black. And then for the kind of in between, which you can't see, I'll show you later, for like a tablet, I chose gray. which you may also see in an art gallery. I chose the push menu just because I like how it looks. And again, the colors I chose were more gallery colors. That's specifically why I chose them. Okay. And then for the grid view, I chose that just because it was a nice way of laying out photos. And it allowed me to select a different number of columns for the tablet. I set it to 2. And then for mobile phones, I set it to 1. So it's just a very easy way for me to lay out photographs. Okay, so when you guys are doing your pages, you're going to need to make a similar determination. You know, looking at your content, what is the best layout and menu system for that content? And what are the best colors for you to pick? As far as the graphics go, you can see that I did include all text on all of them, and I did set the width to 100%, which makes them all responsive. And because I have these set up in columns, 100% is 100% of the column width. So if the page increases, you'll notice the size of the images increases, because it's all based on the width of the column. As far as the required HTML tags, so up at the top, you're going to have the doc type. You're going to have HTML. You'll have an opening and closing head tag. Those are all required. The title is also required because that is what you're going to see up on the tab. And then you have your body tag. Inside the body tag, you need this listing of semantic tags. So inside body, you need article, section, header, footer, and nav. Okay, they all have to be inside the body. And I don't want to see a bunch of divs. Okay, you can see that I did put div in here, but I have header. I also included a side, which is semantic. I have article, I have section, and I have footer. I have all of the required areas. I also have nav. Okay, so I did include all of the requirements in my page. At the top, you need the link to both the print and your index or screen CSS. So I have a link to screen, I have a link to print. Really important that you set the media to print on the print CSS. Otherwise, your print CSS is used for everything, and that is a problem. You're either going to use Gridview or CSS Grid. Okay, and those should be in your external style sheets. As I mentioned, I used Gridview, which you can really see in here, right? Because I got column equals 3. Here I've got column equals 12. Okay, and then up here I've got column equals 12, and then I split it into 2. This is for that little hamburger for my menu, and then this is for the text. Okay, so you can see that this is column 10. Over here is column 2. And I put all of that at the bottom. And then I use different colors and background colors for laptop and mobile and all of that. Let's see, you need at least one H1 and either an H2, H3, or a summary. You do not need all of them, you just need one of them. So I have H1 here, I have H2 here. You need a menu with at least 4 links. Okay, I used the JavaScript push menu, and I actually have 5 links. And you may notice that I included my icon bar here. So the icon bar is another requirement. And if you want to make the icon bar your menu, that is A-OK. If you want to do it separate, that is okay too. The title for the page does need to be in the head section, which I mentioned earlier. Here's my title. The footer should include your contact information. And so here is mine. So basically it's got a mail to link with my Gmail address. And you need some kind of JavaScript event or function or method. So the way I incorporated JavaScript is I used the navigation menu. Okay, so here is the scripting for that. And then there's the icon bar requirement, and you can see that here is my icons for my icon bar. And as I mentioned, I stuck them in my menu. Now you can put them in the menu, you can put them at the bottom. If you want them along the top, that's okay. Totally up to you how you put those in. As far as your CSS goes, for the index or the screen CSS, you should incorporate box sizing. It works with both CSS Grid and Gridview. And you can see that's the very first thing that I have at the top. You need styling for, if you're only using H1 and H2, that's what you need styling for. For using H1 and H3 or H1 and summary, you need to have those things styled. You need a color, a shadow, a font family, and a font size. And so you can see I have H1, H2, and H3, and I did incorporate all of that into my styling. Let's see, all of your link states need to be styled. Okay, and mine are in here somewhere. So my link states are part of my side navigation, but you can see that they all are styled. The navigation menu should be styled. And so here again, this is my navigation menu, which is styled. You can see that I also styled my links that are down in the footer as well. So I do have multiple styling for links. You need a Google font or a custom font up at the top. This is where I've got my Google font. And then the body also needs to be styled. So you can see what I did for styling in the body. So you need font family, background image or color. I included both. You need the icon bar and the styling for the bar, which I do have. And again, my icon bar is part of my JavaScript menu. You need at least one CSS3 transition and animation effect. I incorporated one of them into the icon bar. So if you guys add the icon bar, you will have that requirement met. Now, I did an additional effect for my images, which I am sure you guys noticed. I set the opacity on all the images to 0.5. And then when you point at them, I change it to 1, which makes them solid. And there's a little transition that happens. Okay, so it's kind of a gradual darkening of the image. Okay, so I actually have more than one. You guys only have to have one. Now for printing, the images need to be hidden. The text should be black. Background color should be white. Okay, this is all pretty normal stuff for print. Now to see what it looks like when it prints, all you do is press Control P. And what I chose to do with mine is basically keep the contact information, and I hid everything else. Okay, and if I close that, it still prints properly. So taking a look at that, this is pretty much my CSS for printing. And you can see that I basically set it up for like a mobile 100% width for all of the columns. And then the background is white, the color of the text is black. For script, I said don't display. I've also got a side image and nav not displaying. And then you can see that everything else, icon bar doesn't display. I took the border off the header, and even though it says border none here, I still needed to specify it down here to get rid of it. And that does happen sometimes. You can see a little error. Yeah, you don't need that in there twice. I'm going to pause a second and fix that. Okay, it's fixed. Anytime something still displays when you use the asterisk, which is supposed to be for everything, then that's when you have to actually look at individual tags and specify it within the tag. Also, if you have an inline style, okay, and an inline style is something like this, that is going to override all of your CSS. That is going to override your print CSS. So with this, it didn't matter because I wasn't going to show graphics on the print, but I would try to avoid doing inline styles just because of that problem. If it's something that you're not going to display for printing, great, because here's an inline style, but this aside, which has got this little section in it, that's not going to display for printing. So putting an inline style there is fine. Okay, so you've got your print CSS and you've got your screen CSS. And let me pull up those requirements again. So this is pretty self-explanatory. I didn't even include links on mine. Then make sure that you put a link to this project on your assignment page and make sure you test it live. And I would test it in multiple browsers because it does not always work live the same way it does offline. Okay, so especially if you have mixed casing, sometimes upper and lower case work offline, but they do not work online. So for this project, make sure you check everything. If you run into problems, I can help you. Just make sure you have it online and send me an email.